Let's do this Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh thing. Same-sex marriage bill in the Senate has crossed like a very necessary procedural hurdle. They overcame the filibuster with 12 Republican votes, and it seems like it's going to get sent back to the House. If they do end up like voting on it on the floor, it succeeds in the Senate, goes to the House, they'll vote yes, goes to Biden's desk, and this is a way to kind of preempt what had been hinted at in a concurring opinion by Clarence Thomas, which is like Republican state legislators, Republican operatives, legal groups, come to us with this series of decisions, and we'll help overturn these things on your behalf. That was the coded language of it. So this was like kind of a preemptive protection of same-sex marriage, and hopefully, you know, this was kind of the hardest part. Hopefully it continues to pass those hurdles and goes to Biden's desk. Now, Matt Walsh and Ben Shapiro are not too happy about the fact that there's a same-sex marriage bill that is get likelier and likelier to be passed. And it's just like a reminder, same-sex marriage, 70% approval rating. People widely are in favor of it. But as we keep saying, the Republican Party, a minoritarian party, a party that is trying to impose theocracy, which is widely unpopular. And so they have to find creative ways to sell that to the small sliver of people who might be ignorant about it, but also just kind of seize power and influence by force if they need to. But here's just like kind of a window into these like loser religious fundamentalist types, Matt Walsh and Ben Shapiro, talking about this bill in the Senate right now.
But put aside the rule of construction, the thing that's really amazing to me is that it is now apparently the law of the land and societal rule that the only rationale that you would possibly have for saying that a marriage is between a man and a woman is because you're a Christian or a Jew or a Muslim. That's really the only reason at all. That the only reason will allow you to have these crazy beliefs so long as you can show that they're crazy beliefs. So long as you can show that the reason that you believe that marriage is between a man and a woman is because you read it in a book and because you really believe the book. They keep saying sincere religious belief. I don't even know how you measure sincere religious belief. Are we going to like now monitor how often you go to church or to synagogue, whether you keep kosher or whether you take communion in order to determine you're sincere? I mean, the same media that declares that Nancy Pelosi is a sincere religious believer who's just for the mass abortion of unborn children will declare that you, Matt Walsh, are not actively in favor of the things that you're in favor of. You're just a religious bigot. You're a bigot, right? And your religion is a cover for your bigotry. I'm highly annoyed by the constant derogation of non-religious arguments into religious arguments. And this is what the left loves to do. They like to say you're pro-life. The reason you're pro-life is because of your crazy religion. And so maybe we can respect your crazy religion along those. That is not the argument for marriage. The argument for marriage has literally nothing to do with religion. You could be a visitor from Mars and you could see that all of human procreation relies on man, woman, child. This is not particularly difficult stuff. By essentially boxing in the argument in favor of traditional marriage into, well, if you're a crazy religious believer.
All right, so first of all, he's contradicting himself fairly consistently about it not being a religious argument, but then also falling back on, you know, his religious justification for it. But what he's implying there is that marriage is only for procreation purposes. Right. So a cis man and a cis woman, that's the only legal justification for marriage as an institution. Okay, so which
is why there's no unwed mothers, because you can't get pregnant and can't have children unless you're married, of course.
Well, if you do that, that's because you are not subscribing. You have a moral failing, and we should not be encouraging that as a society. But what he's essentially saying is that if you are unable to have children, say you have endometriosis, you have to have your uterus taken out. You can't get married. Aliens would not understand that. They'd not approve of that. Hey, say you're a widow, or a widower, you're 55 years old, your husband has passed away, you decide to get remarried. Well, that should not be allowed by society because that is not in the purpose of procreation. That's not a religious argument. I'm making a fundamental biological argument. Okay, well then, you know, that is the logic that we're going down here. I mean, if a facts and logic guy, I want to poke some holes in your argument. If it's only about procreation, then those people need to be precluded from getting married.
I mean, I agree with some of he said. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go, Brandon.
I was going to say, I agree with some of what he said in the sense that, like, I would agree that a lot of people, not that it matters how sincere one's religious belief is in terms of whether or not it means it should be like law or doctrine for other religious believers, sincere or not. You know, I agree that with his interpretation that a lot of, you know, it is not sincere. It's people like mapping some sort of lazy moral veneer over what is like a more deep-seated bigotry. Like, you know, what makes this bigotry okay? Like, okay, it makes it okay if we put a religious smear over it, but, you know, the other parts of their life, how they live their life, doesn't reflect that they believe in any of these religious values. And it's worth mentioning, not that their hypocrisy means anything, but it's just like, yeah, you shouldn't feel bad about people telling you that their beliefs are contradicted by your behavior, especially if they don't live up to their own beliefs. But yeah, also to that point, like, he's not making an argument; he's expressing an opinion. Like which is a very, like, you know, cute sleight of hand that the Ben Shapiro types do, where he just like expresses an opinion, doesn't really back it up with facts, just like equivocates between other types of arguments that are being made, and then like relies on his, like, you know, arguably bigoted audience, not arguably, but bigoted audience to fill in the blanks for the argument that he's making with whatever their background is. Like, if it's religious people, they'll make it a religious argument. If they're just like traditional bigots, they'll just make the bigoted arguments. So, like, I mean, there is no real argument besides the religious one that makes not letting men and women get married make sense. It's like when people, it's like listening to flat earthers tell you that there's a non-religious way to explain the earth is flat. It's like, there really isn't. Like,
well, that's kind of what I'm hinting at here. Just is that, like, if you want to make a logical argument that it should only be for procreation, there are a lot of marriages that can't happen under that system, and they're, you know, religious fundamentalists like those two are talking about how women shouldn't have abortions and they can just put their child up for adoption, right? They can just put the child up for adoption. But hey, you want that child to get adopted into a married family, a married couple? Maybe they were unable to have kids at that point. Like, his whole structure, there's so many different layers of bullshit. If that is the only reason for marriage, then there's a lot of holes you can poke in. Yeah,
they're fundamentalists, but they don't want to be called out for like a lack of real reasoning. They want to like give the veneer of a real logical argument because at its core, it's just they're fundamentalists.
Yeah.
But we still have to bring up the obvious here, which is that Mr. Facts don't care about your feelings. His go-to in order to make his point is, if Martians come down to Earth. Yeah. I mean, come on. Like, what is with these right-wingers? I'm obsessed with this myself because I experienced this in the real world when I spoke with Tim Pool. Their obsession with these fictional, and in this case, science fictional hypotheticals. Why can't, if you are based in fact, why can't you make your argument using real world examples and not go, if this happened though, could we take this scenario and try to turn this into a factual? No. If Martians came down here, what do these Martians look like? Are they could be asexual. They could be just procreate by splitting their body in half. They could be looking at us having sex and saying, what the hell is this weird shit? Like, what are you talking about, Ben Shapiro?
Yeah.
Like, that's to your point. It's like lazy scientific. He's trying to give it a naturalized argument, going like, okay, like, but if there were aliens, they would also necessarily be like mammalian and sexually dimorphic. So they'd come down and be like, you guys aren't doing it right. And it's like, are you serious? Like, that's
the
not
aliens
how, like,
the aliens would definitely fall into the gender binary, Brandon.
Yeah, we don't even have like two sexes. Why would they?
Yeah.
Also, he said Martians, not aliens. If he was aliens, I'd give him a pass because there probably are aliens out there. In my estimation, universe is too big for us to be the only living thing. But he said Martians. There's nobody living on Mars. He's talking about nobody.
Yes. Own him with your facts, Matt.
Some folks might like to bring up, sci-fi thought experiments, but just a little bit of history. This is from Kathleen Brown's Good Wives, Nasty Wenches, and Anxious Patriarchs. Really interesting history on colonialism and gender. This is from one of the sections. The need to maintain patriarchal households and orderly communities became both an obligation of and justification for state power by criminalizing witchcraft and certain sexual acts that had previously been punished by communities. The state intervened in local definitions of social order to bolster its own authority. Henrician statutes, Henry VIII, declaring sodomy and bestiality capital offenses, for example, criminalized non-heterosexual behavior. Parliament's decision to criminalize witchcraft in 1546 1942, moreover, tightened the connections between gender and ideologies of state power by reiterating categories of deviance and encouraging community efforts to enforce conformity. And I'll just skip, I'll just read the second paragraph. The positive reevaluation of marriage by Protestants and Counter-Reformation Catholics during the late 16th century also reinvigorated patriarchal analogies to political authority. English Protestants rejected celibacy, allowing clergymen to form legal unions. Catholics and the Council of Trent meanwhile instructed adherents to embrace marriage as a sacrament rather than as a last-ditch attempt to avoid the sin of fornication. When Tudor monarchs confiscated monastic properties that had formerly provided a celibate alternative for some English women and men, England joined the rest of Europe in making marriage a more likely and worthy destiny. Both Catholic and Protestant churches attempted to make good on the new importance of marriage by claiming exclusive rights to act as conjugal gatekeepers, declaring when the unmarried might be legally considered wed. So this is really like a pissing contest between state Protestant powers and state Catholic powers in the late Middle Ages, early Enlightenment.
Do we have any more of that clip? Well, I want to see Matt Walsh's response. No, it's fine. I paused it.
That all of human procreation relies on man, woman, child. This is not particularly difficult stuff. By essentially boxing in the argument in favor of traditional marriage into, well, if you're a crazy religious believer, maybe we'll let you have that. But, you know, if you're a cake baker, then we're not sure about that, right? I mean, like, we're not sure how far this religious liberty thing extends. What you're really doing is you're setting the ground game at same-sex marriage and traditional marriage are completely the same thing. And if you object to it, the only reason that we'll even allow you to do that is because of this crazy thing called religion.
Okay, so no Matt Walsh response. Yeah, you have no logical argument for it.
This is so funny, like when they say, this is like you're saying there's no difference between women, trans women and women. It's like actually there's like terms like cisgender and trans that like you get upset when people use. So yeah. Like actually we can differentiate these things. You just don't like the differentiation.
I'm too obsessed on this, him bringing up the Martian thing, because I'm thinking, the gears are turning in my head. I'm thinking, like, even fictional Martians, it doesn't make sense. Yeah. Because what is, like, the trope when someone gets abducted by aliens? They get anal probed. So I mean, they wouldn't even be fine. They don't even agree with just, you know, boring old traditional sex and marriage.
Yeah, aliens are pro-sodomy.
What's also funny is they're like, imagine aliens, they don't understand trans people. Like, motherfucker, what's your excuse? Like, you're not from Mars. Like, why are you so hung up on it? Like, I mean, we don't need to bring in aliens. You're acting like the alien here. And frankly, I think, like somebody pointed out, like aliens would, if they had such advanced technology, they would notice, oh, there's some like, gay stuff going on in the animal kingdom outside of humanity too. Like, I don't think they'd be as confused as, say, religious fundamentalists are.
I just remember back to when Matt Walsh was like complaining that the left or, leftists or communists, whatever, like they just want everyone to give into their base instincts and live like animals. And then whenever you hear them talk about the way people should behave, it's just always about like procreation, like the most like baseline, mammalian urge. We have sex only. We live to get married so we can more efficiently have sex and produce offspring to like continue the species. Like their appreciation of the rest of society or like companionship just seems to be so very shallow. Like, I don't know what to say. Like I would feel, I guess personally, offended if someone was like, I'm only in a relationship with you so that we can have like children to procreate the species.
Yes. Yeah, right.
Also, wasn't there a book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus? What do they think all the men were doing up on Mars?
Oh, there you go. You got him in a logic pretzel, Bimber.
I got him from every corner. There we go. I thought of every scenario.
Hey, this video is sponsored by Established Titles. What is Established Titles? It is a fun novelty gift that also helps you preserve some natural woodlands. It's a project based on historic Scottish custom where landowners are referred to as lairds or lords and ladies in English. Title packs give you at least 1 square foot of dedicated land with a unique plot number. So what happens is they plant a tree with every order. They work with global charities, One Tree Planted and Trees for the Future, to support global reforestation efforts. And you get one of these certificates. I'm a lord. I'm also a lady, too. I can be both. There's no reason I can't be. The first 200 people purchasing a title pack using my link will effectively be next to our plot. If you want to become a lord and lady, we can create our own majority report kingdom. So check it out. You can also, on official documents where they use a prefix, you can call yourself Lord or Lady. It makes an amazing last-minute gift. Established Titles is actually running a massive Black Friday sale right now. Plus, if you use the code MAJORITY, you get an additional 10% off. Go to establishedtitles.com/majority to get your gifts now and help support the channel.